For the last 30 years, they've been stealing, raping, destroying, and killing us. Over 6 million people killed, over 7 million people displaced, almost 1 million women raped, child turned into slave or killed. Some are forced to eat the dead parent's skin. Others are forced to watch as the dad rape their grandmother to save their life. I apologize for your discomfort, but it's happening right now in Congo. They are killing us. Every day they are killing us. So why are you all silent? How much more blood do they need? Because of our minerals? Because of our soul? Monsieur Félix Tshisekedi, il est temps de donner le signal. Les Congolais sont pas à se défendre eux-mêmes si vous n'êtes pas capable de le faire. Trop c'est trop. Trop c'est trop. Stop the genocide now. Stop the genocide now. Stop the genocide now.
Congolais tout élément, Congolais tout élément, Congolais tout élément, Banamaï tout élément. Ah, trop c'est trop, président Félix trop c'est trop. Ah, trop c'est trop, beaucoup fait mingi dit trop c'est trop. Ah, enough is enough. Rwanda is killing, enough is enough. Ah, enough is enough. Rwanda is killing, enough is enough. Trop c'est trop. Félix, trop c'est trop. Trop c'est trop. Trop c'est trop.
Good morning, everyone. I'm glad to be back with you. And I'm going to be your host as every weekend, our rendezvous to discuss about the Congo. So welcome to Congo Unfiltered, and I'm going to be your host, Gaetonzo. And today we're going to begin with kind of like a powerful two-part series that ties together, I would say seemingly distant, but really deeply interconnected struggle, Palestine and the Congo. You might have probably seen on your timeline the president of Israel, Herzog, visited the Congo early this week. And in this part one, Gaza, the DRC, and Herzog visit an honest conversation with a distinguished guest, Reverend Awad, Reverend Alex Awad, who is Palestinian. He was born and raised in Jerusalem. After graduation from St. George High School, he studied in Europe and then moved to the United States, where he was able to finish his bachelor degree at Lee University and a master in education in 1976 at North Georgia University. So from there, he was able to receive another MA in missions and evangelism from Asbury Theological Seminary in Wilmore, Kentucky. So for the last 26 years, Reverend Awad with his wife Brenda served as missionaries with the General Board of Global Ministry at the United Methodist Church in Israel, Palestine. Until recently, he was the pastor of an international church in East Jerusalem and taught courses at Bethlehem Bible College, where he served as faculty members, dean of students, and board member. So in June 2015, he was awarded honorary doctorate at Bethlehem Bible College annual commencement. So Reverend Awad wrote Through the Eyes of the Victims and Palestinian Memories. So both books reveal the realities of life under Israeli military occupations. So Reverend Awad wrote numerous articles that call for justice for both Palestinian and Israeli. So until his retirement in June 2015, Reverend Awad directed the Shepherd Society, which is the humanitarian arm of the Bethlehem Bible College. So many needy Palestinians seek the help of the Shepherd Society in meeting emergency needs such as food, medicine, and employment. So Reverend Awad married to Brenda, and they live in Eugene, Oregon, where I had the opportunity or the honor to meet him during an event hosted by the PSL movement, the PSL group, uh, uh, Party for Socialism and Liberation. They had Brenda and Reverend Alex Awad have three children and two grandchildren. So it was really in this kind of context that I'm joined by Reverend, and I'm gonna bring him on stage right now. Good morning. How you doing?
Good morning. I'm doing good, and I'm honored to be with you and with your friends all around the world. And I just appreciate the opportunity to have this dialogue with you.
Yes, no, thank you for doing me this honor, and really today, and we discussed offline about that, and for also folks watching online today. Really, I invited you, Friends of the Congo invited you, so that we could have a conversation part of that series, because we really want to dissect the Israeli president visits. And in today's conversation, we will be speaking plainly, not politically necessarily, but truthfully, and about what's happening in Gaza, the roots of the war, and how religious narratives, especially Christian Zionism, shape what the world sees and what it refuses to see. So we will try in this conversation for folks asking like how this even connect to the Congo at all. Like I mentioned, the visit of the president of Israel, but in this live, we are going to connect this particular visit and the story that you're going to share during our conversation. We are going to connect that to the Congo, because as Israeli President Isaac Herzog stood in Kinshasa next to President Felix Tshisekedi just weeks ago, the DRC is also preparing to assume its seat as a non-permanent member of the United Nations Security Council, which is very important when it comes to international law and upholding justice, ending genocide, ending the war crimes against humanity happening in both Gaza and also the Congo. So, in that spirit of solidarity, and we had that event that I mentioned a few weeks ago in Eugene. I was really moved by your presentation. Hopefully, when we are trying to dissect why the president of the Congo would even say, for example, that, and I think, and that's kind of the conversation that we'll have. He will say that he stands with that he believes that the state of Israel should exist, and he believes in peace and security in Israel, erasing or not mentioning what's currently happening to Palestinian, and why even that visit, right? So we were trying to unpack it. So again, thank you so much for coming. So for joining us. So really, without really getting started, I guess before we get into the policy, theology, and diplomacy of our conversation, can you start by simply telling us what life is like for Palestinian today, whether it is in the diaspora or in Palestine?
Yes, thank you again for having me on your program. Just to give you an idea, I was born in 1946. So 2 years after my birth, we had the first Arab-Israeli war. My father, who was a civilian, was killed in that war, leaving my mother with 7 children. That's what war does anywhere in the world. War is really evil. War is bad for humanity. But my family, we felt the pain of that war because my mother became a widow with 7 children. Not only this, soon after my father was killed, we were pushed out of our home and we became refugees. And we have to move from our neighborhood, which was in West Jerusalem, and we have to go to East Jerusalem. Uh, yeah, to East Jerusalem, even to the old city. So that is how I started my life. When I was 2 years old, I had no father; he's already gone, and my mother put us in orphanages and in boarding schools, and she worked very, very hard to take care of us. Uh, but that happened not only to me and to my family, but to all Palestinians. We all suffered from the ethnic cleansing and the genocide that took place in 1948. About 800,000 people lost their homes. Many, many, many people were killed. We were forced out of our homes. We have to run to Jordan, to Syria, to Lebanon, to the Gaza Strip, to Egypt, to refugee camps scattered all over the place. And we were never allowed to go back to our homes to get our possessions, our homes, our land. And then other people came from Europe. Zionists came from Europe, and they took our places, and they took our land and our trees and our fruits and our water, and everything that belongs to us now belong to them. And the United Nations made beautiful resolutions, but the United Nations was not able to stop, the genocide, the ethnic cleansing, and the apartheid that has happened to us, even when I was a child. Then we have another war, the 1967 war, and Israel invaded and took part of the West Bank and took also the Gaza Strip and took the Sinai Peninsula from Egypt. The big war became bigger, and the number of refugees also increased. And from then until today, the Israelis have been building Jewish settlements on Palestinian land, even against international law, against the United Nations, against every legal international law. They went against everything, and they did what they want to do because they have the power to do it, and because the United States and other Western countries supported them. They could not have done it without the support of the United States and other Western countries. And so that is really the reason behind the October 7. And that's why the Palestinians in Gaza revolted on October 7, because of all the atrocities that happened before October 7. And you cannot, disconnect one thing from the other thing. But, we and Congo have something similar. There is now a genocide in Gaza, and there has been and maybe continues to be a genocide in Congo. And the imperial hand, the powerful countries in the West are really behind all of these atrocities. And so, in a way, Congo and Palestine, the people of Congo and the people of Palestine, we are walking in the same trail of tears and experiencing, a lot of oppression on the hand of so-called civilized countries.
Yeah, thank you so much for sharing that. And you say something very remarkable, and I think that Congolese people listening could really connect, talking about the genocide and also the creation or the establishment of settlements, and the Congo is something similar. Like we continue to say, Friends of the Congo, part of the mapping report, the UN mapping exercise report, which is a United Nations report that was published in 2010, that really documents and give precise locations and also how atrocities were committed, and who committed them. And we're talking about war crimes, crimes against humanity, and genocide. And until today, now that we have, and there was news this morning about the Congolese government coming to agreement with the Rwanda-backed militia, who has been, since its creation, its inception, which is nothing but just an iteration of other militia groups that Rwanda has backed from like years from 1996. the first invasion from FDLR, FDL, honestly, FDLR2, FDL, CNDP, RCD, and all of them, and even M23. And you say something very interesting, that everything that you explain kind of like ended up to what happened on October 7th. And I sat down in your presentation when I had the honor to co-present with you on the Congo side, and you described October 7 as a volcano. Can you speak like more like like, yeah, what do you mean?
Yeah, October 7 was the eruption of a volcano. But to have a volcano, you have to have a burning magma inside the mountain. And, that burning magma, sometimes it gives, humanity signs, because it may have a tremor here, tremor there, some kind of fire here, fire there. But it gives us, ample time so that we can run away and move from from around the volcano. Well, before October 7, we had at least 6 Israeli attacks on Gaza. Each one of them I called a tremor, where in 2008, the Israelis bombed Gaza, killed about a couple of thousand people. Then 2010, then 2012, then 2018, then 2021. So the Israelis were killing in Gaza, and the Palestinians have been calling on the United Nations and on the rest of the world to stop it. And the international community was not able to stop it because of the US veto power in the United Nations. But when Palestinians get killed a year after year, a year after year, a year after year, and nothing is happening to stop it, then the Palestinians will say, why should we care? And then we want to break the prison wall. This is what happened in October 7. The Palestinians just broke the prison wall, and they decided to confront the jailers, the prisoners. It was bloody, it was ugly, it wasn't good, but it's natural. If you put a dog or a cat in a corner and you spank them in a stick, sooner or later they'll scratch you back. That's what happened on October 7. It's really the Palestinians trying to say, enough. Stop beating me, stop killing me, stop building settlements, stop building walls, stop confining me, stop the blockade of Gaza, which was a severe blockade for 16 years before October 7, 2023, 16 years of blockade. And it was like a biblical siege where nothing goes in or out of Gaza without the permit of the Israeli authorities. So October 7 didn't come out of a vacuum. It really came out of a lot of atrocities that the Israelis have done against the Palestinians. And I blame the United States, I blame Western powers for not stopping the Israelis ahead of October 7. October 7 would not have happened if the Western powers would have interfered, and said to the Israelis, enough is enough. Stop what you are doing. But they did not. And then, of course, we know that after October 7, as the Israelis started their genocide, they didn't have the guts to stop the Israelis. So we have 2 full years of genocide where almost 800,000 Palestinians have been massacred. So that's a lot of people.
Is that since October 7th, or that
Yeah.
was before October 7th?
It's since October 7.
Wow.
Since October 7, we had about, let me see, maybe I put one more zero in my mind. Over 80,000 Palestinians have been killed. Over 80,000 Palestinians have been killed, and 10,000 Palestinians are still under the rubble. where where we have not been able to dig them out of the rubble, because what the Israelis did, they would bomb a building with all the people in it, and the Palestinians don't have the equipment to go to the building and clear up the rubble to get the bodies of the people killed. So we still have about 10,000 people under the rubble.
A question that I've always wanted to know, and I was documenting myself, but I think it's very important sometimes to have a perspective of somebody who lived there, or like a native. And you said that you blame the United States, understandable, because of the role that the country has played, and I will even argue that we see the same similarities when it comes to the Congo, Rwanda even being one of America's strongest ally. And I could go ahead and argue about why even the United States is supporting the Rwandan government. But let me ask you this: talking about, because the human cause that you just described, and thank you so much for really going deeper into the history there, and showing us that really that history did not start on October 7th. They did not begin in 2023. It didn't start in 2006, and you went all the way even to 1948, which is I think really crazy when you think about a conflict, and we're trying to look at the solution to find that conflict. What role do you think that the media has played into shaping that narrative? That would be my first question. And why do you think that the Western world, including the U.S., has been blindly supporting the Israeli government?
Yeah, first of all, the media have played a very, very negative role. I blame the United States government, I blame Western government, but I also blame the media, because have they been saying the truth, the American people would have gotten up in arms to defend Palestine and the Palestinians. But the Western media always covered up the crimes of Israel. They always called Palestinians who were trying to defend themselves terrorists. The media used awful vocabulary to describe Palestinians, and they made Israelis always look like they are humans. We can have an Israeli father telling about how his daughter was killed, and all of that, putting Israel in a good light and putting the Palestinians in a bad light. That has been the media, believe me, since 1948. It's been really only recently. I mean, this last week we had an article in the New York Times and an article in the Washington Post, and also a BBC program where it shows very openly and clearly the Israeli settler violence against Palestinians. This is, refreshing for me as a Palestinian, because this is very unusual, and only recently that the Western media has turned itself maybe 360 degrees to try to tell the truth about what's happening in the West Bank and in the Gaza Strip. But Western media have been complicit in apartheid, in genocide, and in all the occupation and all the ugliness that's been happening between Israelis and Palestinians. And believe me, if the Western media would have said the truth about what's happening in Palestine, we would have had peace maybe 20 years ago, and we would have reconciled with the Israelis, and both Israelis and Palestinians would have lived in peace. Now, going to the other part of your question, which is why does the United States support Israel? Even support Israel when Israel is doing wrong. There's nothing wrong with the United States supporting Israel or supporting any other countries. That is good when one country supports another country. But the U.S. support for Israel has been always biased and working against peace and justice in the Holy Land. You cannot come to broker a conflict between two parties and you put all your weight and all your support on one side of the conflict and you totally ignore the other side. That's not how you make peace. And this is exactly how the United States been behaving. And one proof on that is look at UN, at the UN and the veto power of the United States in the United Nations. Every time the nations of the world gather together at the United Nations to discuss Palestine, and they come up with a resolution, there were two states who totally ignored it or veto it, and that is use the power of veto. Well, with Israel, they totally dismissed it, but with the United States, they've used the power of veto, always against Palestinian rights, always against even peace, even you know, when you say Israelis are building settlements in the West Bank and the international community wants to stop it, everybody will say yes, except the United States will use its veto power to reject the resolution, to say no to the resolution. So this kind of history, and look at the Trump administration. In his first administration, Trump moved the Israeli embassy from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem. Mm-hmm. He also told the Israelis that he recognizes the legality of the Israeli settlements in the West Bank. He also said that Israel can continue control of the Golan Heights. It's now an Israeli territory. He dismissed and expelled all Palestinian diplomats from Washington, D.C. And he cut all support to UNRWA and all support to the UNRWA. This is the organization that helps Palestinian refugees.
A United Nations organization, yes, to be clear to the audience. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. He cut all support. So why did he do that? Because he had Zionist support. One lady, you know, Madam Adelson, she gave him $100 million to support his campaign to be reelected. And she told him, I give you this money in order to declare that the United States accepts Jewish settlements in the West Bank. And he listened to her, of course. Money has to play. But this is not the only person, but many Jewish billionaires, many Israeli billionaires gave a lot of money to different American political leaders in order to sway them not to support peace and justice in the Holy Land.
Let me chime in. You use a term that might not be familiar with our audience, right? Like, I know what it is, but if you could kind of like break down, you use the term Zionism, the Zionist.
Yeah.
And can you explain what that term means?
Sure. Zionism is a little bit over 100 years old and started by a man called Theodor Herzl. Theodor Herzl, we call him the father of Zionism, and he wrote a book in about 1819 with the title The Jewish State, the Jewish State. And this guy, he recommended that the Jews who are persecuted in Europe should leave Europe and come to Palestine and live in Palestine. So the people who agreed with him and supported him, we call them the Zionists. Zion is a hill in Jerusalem. And so from that name, the hill in Jerusalem, came the larger name of the city of Jerusalem, the Zion, and became also the name for the Zionist movement. So what the Zionists want is to create a Jewish state in the Holy Land. Now, as a Palestinian, I wouldn't mind if Jews wanted to come and live in the Holy Land. But the Zionist movement did not just want the Jews to come and live in the Holy Land as equals with Palestinians. No, they wanted a Jewish state in the Holy Land, meaning that the Palestinians have to either become second-rate citizens, second-class citizens, or have to get out of the country. And Zionist leaders like Herzog and later Ben-Gurion, they said the only way we can do it is to push the Palestinians out of the country, which means ethnic cleansing. So part of the Zionist agenda was the ethnic cleansing of Palestine in order to create a Jewish homeland in Palestine for the Jewish people. That is the sin of history. That is the mistake of history. And unfortunately, many Christians supported that, and we call them Christian Zionists. So Christian Zionism refers to Christians who read in the Bible, and from the Bible, they come to the conclusion that God gave the Holy Land to the Jewish people, and that if we bless Israel, God will bless us. If we don't bless Israel, God will curse us. And so they support Israel, and they support every evil thing that Israel is doing in the name of God and in the name of the Bible. And that is ridiculous.
It's interesting because from the younger age and what we see out there in the media, that you deconstructed and say that that was part of the propaganda, also shaping the narrative to vilify a Palestinian. The sound or the story out there about the conflict in Gaza, the conflict between Palestine and Israel, is as it looks like it is a religious one. On one side, the good folks, right? Good quotation mark Christians who are Israel or Jewish and who support Christianity and all of that. And on the other side, Arabs, Islam. But you're Christian, and you're telling us that the Christians are also being killed in Gaza. They're also being bombed in Gaza. And the Christians, whether it is Christians in the West and Christian in Israel, or Christian Zionism, I'm not going to like single out people, but Christian Zionism is the roots of what's going on in Gaza. Am I hearing correctly?
Yes, I think the Christian Zionists, they have so much power in the United States, not only in the society, but also in the government of the United States. Christian Zionists are the ones who supported the presidency of Donald Trump. Without the Christian Zionists and their evangelical brothers and sisters, Donald Trump could not have won the victory in his last election, and even in the previous election. And this is why Donald Trump is doing what they want him to do, not out of conviction, but he knows that they are a voting bloc and they vote for him, and therefore he supports their agenda. And Vice President Vance, he is a Christian Zionist, and within the administration, there are so many Christian Zionists within the American administration. Even the America's ambassador to Israel today in Jerusalem, Mike Huckabee, is a Christian Zionist. So you can see how the influence of Christian Zionism so powerful in American foreign policy.
So talking about now the connection with the Congo, and I think is very important, and very thank you so much for the context, because as a Congolese person, we're trying to understand, one, knowing what Israel has been doing, the government of Israel has been doing in Gaza, in the West Bank, where even Hamas isn't there, right? Like, because we keep hearing terrorists, Hamas, that's why we need to defeat Hamas. But then what's going on in the West Bank, where there is no terrorists, where there is no Hamas, right? Why do you continue to provoke Palestinian? Why do you continue to expand settlements? And even the videos that you mentioned, and I saw footages of American journalists being chased, right, by settlers, and that American journalist, I forgot his name, was talking to the embassy, the U.S. embassy, or someone at the UN embassy, essentially asking for protection. And they said they did not have the capacity to do that, to protect him as a U.S. citizen, which is outrageous, right? Like your own government is saying that they cannot protect you as an American citizen, as a journalist, as you're trying to cover what looks to be, from my understanding, a really good events, big events in terms of like the Palestinian tradition to celebrate the olive or something like that.
Yes,
Uh,
yes, picking olives.
yes. And to me, I see the exact same behavior with the Congolese government. I'm going to show like a really short clip
Sure.
of the Israeli president visiting the Congo, and with all that history of the Israel government's doing in Gaza, in the midst of the Congolese government also trying to seek international recognition about what many argues to be genocide happening in the Congo. Um, like I mentioned, documented in UN reports, multiple UN reports, particularly the UN exercise mapping report of 2010, published like 15 years ago now. On October 1st was the 15th year anniversary of that publication, and so you know that you are trying to seek justice as a Congolese, I would say, nation. And how can you get that international recognition when you can stand next to somebody who is right now at the International Court of Justice, like the country, right? Trial for genocide. It's an ongoing trial. Like it's like a friend accused of, let me just say it's Congo Unfiltered, a friend accused of rape. Like I will not even show any type of support, uh, especially in the presence of overwhelming evidence,
Hmm.
until that person is declared not guilty. But the move from the Congolese government was ridiculous in the sense that you cannot demand or you cannot ask for that international support and then stand for someone who is on trial for genocide. And still, so I'm gonna play that clip and then share with folks, with the audience, one of the quote that President Tshisekedi, the president of DRC, shared, and have your honest thought on that. So let me put that. So red carpet for the president of Israel, uh, it VIP guest, right? And this is what we know, because Friends of the Congo, we talk about it every single time. That according to the UN reports S slash 2024 slash 432 and that can be seen on the appendix, right? And it says that the group of experts of the United Nations requested the government of Israel to provide information regarding when and to which end user it authorizes sale or transfer of the material, in particular export details of the 120 millimeters mortar munitions to Rwanda, DRC, and Uganda between 2020 and 2024. At the time of drafting, the group had not received a response. So here's what's going on. A militia group backed by Rwanda has been killing civilians. And you had Israeli-made weapons found, on M23 hands, right? And the type of ammunition I said was the guided mortar size ammunition, 120 millimeters, making on the base of drive units, IMI, and there is Israeli. I believe there are Israeli companies. So the group note that both mortar shells are similar to the Israeli IMI or Albit system, depending on model and year of production, made 120 millimeter guided mortar munition. The type of ammunition could be Dorkran or stylus, and the color pattern might be final user specific. So we have Israeli weapons. That's the United Nations who's saying that somehow militia groups accused of war crimes, accused of crimes against humanity, have been using. And President Tshisekedi of the DRC stood next to President Herzog of Israel, who visited, as I said early this week, and he said, and I quote, "We uphold the existence of Israel, and we uphold peace in Israel." Meanwhile, we have UN reports document. This is what he said: that we uphold the existence of Israel and we uphold peace in Israel. This is what he said. But so he said that meanwhile, when we have UN report documented Israeli-made weapons, as I mentioned, in the hands of the M23. So I want to have kind of like your reaction, because when we're talking about justice in Gaza, you talked about peace, but one of the preconditions for peace is justice. And the International Court of Justice is literally has put Israeli on stand for genocide because a different country, South Africa, decided to bring that case to the international level, right? So I think it's very important for us to also kind of like connect the dots and also understand why it's very important to understand the interconnection and also why solidarity is important. So I really want to have your perspective as a Palestinian, somebody whose family kind of like known the war, went through the war, were refugees. That you mentioned that your father killed by the Israeli government years ago. What is your reaction to Herzog visit, and particularly those words of President Tshisekedi, and I quote, "We uphold the existence of Israel and we uphold peace in Israel"?
Yeah. First of all, I think the visit should not have happened. Especially at this time, especially when a massacre is going on in Gaza, genocide is going on in Gaza, and also an apartheid, severe, really more harsh apartheid than ever was in South Africa is happening now in the West Bank. So in such a situation, no country should be welcoming the Israeli president, not any country in the world. And the Congolese government need to make a decision whether they are going to be on the right side of history or on the wrong side of history. I know it has to do with money. I know it has to do with business. I know it has to do with development. And the Congolese government wants to use Israeli expertise and commerce with the state of Israel in order to progress and bring prosperity to the Congolese people. I know this is the bottom line from the perspective of the Congolese government, but are we willing to sell our morality and our humanity in order to progress financially and commercially and so on? You see, there is nothing wrong with the Congolese government saying, we want peace in Israel and we want, prosperity for the Jewish people. There's nothing wrong with that. It is when the Congolese government is not willing to stand in solidarity with the Palestinian people and ask the Palestinian people, what do I do? This president of Israel is coming to visit us. Should we welcome him or not? Ask the Palestinian people what to do. And the Palestinian people would say, wait, or at least make demands on the state of Israel. We would welcome your president as long as you don't stop those cargoes and trucks going to Gaza with food and medicine in them. Make a deal with the Israeli government to support the Palestinian people in their starvation. And then you can hug the Israeli president or let him welcome him on a red carpet after his government does the right thing for peace and justice. And not only as far as Palestine is concerned, but as far as any other country in the world. We should not put mammon ahead of God. We should not have money and business ahead of morality, ahead of what is right in the international affairs. And I think that in the long run, when the Congolese government and the Congolese people take the right stand, in the long run, I believe, from my Christian perspective, God will bless the Congo and God will meet every challenge that the Congo has and bless the country with peace and justice when they also stand for peace and justice.
And yeah, I'm going to show a really interesting tweet from a Congolese activist, young activist, Ponsian. He said the DRC found it to be a good idea to launch, and I say that too, to launch on one hand a campaign for the recognition of genocide of the Congolese, and on the other hand, to welcome with great fanfare the presidents of a state that is currently committing another genocide led by perverted clowns. And even in the, and that was spoke by Ponsian, and even in the statement, and that's kind of like the arguments that people are saying, that are putting forward. When President Tshisekedi said we uphold the existence of Israel and we uphold the peace in Israel, the first sentence, we uphold the existence of Israel. But Israel has existed. Israel exists and has existed since literally the creation of the United Nations under the current form, 1948, I believe.
Yes.
So the state of Israel exists. So isn't that kind of like, I don't even know the really term in English, but I won't say a contradiction, but like you're already stating something that is already a fact. In reality, and that's maybe a question that I have to ask you, the state of Palestine is still something that does not exist, that has not been put into existence. So why are we going to uphold the existence of something that already exists while trying to deny or even avoid talking about something that must exist? Because it is a nation, there are people living there, they're sharing history, they are sharing culture, and that aspiration of wanting to exist as a country, as a nation, recognized by the international community as being blocked by years. Don't you think it's kind of like I don't know, it's just weird to kind of make that statement?
Sure. I mean, we know Israel not only exists, but it's a very strong country. It is so strong that it is fighting against Gaza, against the West Bank, against Lebanon, against
Wow.
Syria, against Iraq, against Iran. I mean, Israel exists and exists with the blessing of the most powerful nations of the world. So there is no fear about the existence of the state of Israel. And also, we as Palestinians, we are not calling for the dismantling of the state of Israel. We are only calling for live and let live. Let us live in one state as equals, Palestinians and Israelis, or let us have two states, a Palestinian state next to a Jewish state. But this is what my suggestion for the Congolese people and the Congolese government. You people went through colonialism. You went through the brutality of Western nations, occupying and colonizing, stealing your treasures. You know what it is to suffer humiliation from the hand of Western nations. This is the time for you to say, okay, let us stand with solidarity with those people who are oppressed today as we have been oppressed in our history. Let us stand in solidarity with what is just, what is good, what is right. Not that we want the destruction of Israel. I would endorse the Israeli statehood. No problem with me to have a state of Israel. No problem with any Palestinians with having state of Israel. But the problem is uh, no state of Israel should totally cancel the possibility of a Palestinian state. That is where we are today. And this is where Congo can work with other nations in Africa first, and then with Europe and the United States and Canada to try to make sure that the Palestinian state becomes a reality. And that when Herzog comes, he comes, and he is welcome because he was influential in creating a Palestinian state next to the state of Israel. Otherwise, it is that his visit is really in vain.
Yes, and the second part of that quote, we uphold peace in Israel, and I think we kind of like already talked the state of Israel already exists. I don't think there is anyone who will disagree with that, or who will be against
Mhm.
the existence of a state, unless obviously as we discussed, unless it is Palestine, then people seem to be against it suddenly, right? But we do agree, like the state of Israel exists, should continue to exist. So that's the state of Palestine. So that's the state of Congo.
Yes.
The sovereignty of states, and Congo is has been recognized, and that's kind of like the weirdness into that. And when I discuss with folks about to be careful about what they're asking for, the Congo is a country that is recognized, that has been recognized. The Congo Free State, and like I was saying, was recognized to exist as a state, as a person property of King Leopold II. But who recognized that first? It was President of the United States, Grover Cleveland. But that recognition didn't mean that the people of the Congo at that time had
Mhm.
any agency, had any rights, had any voice, right? And and fast forward, the Congo was even become able to become independent from Belgium in 1960 and elected Patrice Lumumba as a prime minister. But that still didn't mean that the Congo had the right to decide about the politics of their own affairs, to decide about how they wanted to distribute the wealth that they had on their ground. That's the reason why Patrice Lumumba was assassinated.
Mm.
Literally was elected in June 30th, 1960, and then by January 17th, he was assassinated. He didn't even last. I think he only spent like maybe two couple months or 3 months as a prime minister, and then he was in house arrest, and then there was like rebellion or that was backed by Belgium, and then he was arrested and he was tortured, killed, and this entire thing happened when the Congo was recognized as a free and independent
Mm.
country with a seat at the United Nations, right? And fast forward, we talk about Rwanda today that has been invading killing, plundering the Congo, and all of that is happening while the Congo is about to become, and I mentioned at the beginning, one of the UN non-permanent member at the United Nations Security Council. So you have a country that is recognized internationally, but that has not known peace. You has a country. You have a country that has a seat at the United Nations, right? But doesn't have sovereignty at all. That, like, literally, as if like Congo today doesn't decide who can come in the country and who cannot. Congo today cannot decide that the occupier, which is Rwanda, that they needs to get out of the Congo. Because sovereignty is not something that is given to the Congolese people. That's something that they must fight for. So in that same perspective, then when you talk about having peace in Israel, and then you forget that the Israeli government is the occupier in the crisis, then you're not tackling the justice components before we get the peace, right? And then how then you're gonna get peace is if every single time that people are oppressed, disenfranchised, you're not treating them as human being with people who have rights, who have agency to, ask for basic rights. And before I go into the next one, and that was something that I was reading from the Amnesty International, some of like the rights that the Israeli government as the occupier has control over, right? Like what are the things that the Palestinian people, whether it is in Gaza or in the West Bank today, are kind of like not allowed to do because of how the Israeli government is controlling things. Can you like name a few things so that we can kind of like draw the parallel with what's going on in Congo?
Well, first of all, there is no freedom of movement. If you are like living in Jerusalem and you want to go to Ramallah, which is the seat of the Palestinian government in Ramallah, you may have about 5 or 6 checkpoints. And a drive that should take you only 20 minutes may take you 2 or 3 hours because of all of these checkpoints. But if you drive from Hebron all the way to Ramallah, you may need the whole day. It should only take you maybe an hour, 10 minutes, but it could take you the whole day because the Israelis have at least a minimum of 700 to 800 checkpoints all over the West Bank. And these checkpoints are only to hinder Palestinian movement. So there is no freedom of movement. Then we are forced to use the Israeli currency. No Palestinian uses any currency but an Israeli currency. Even in Gaza today, they use the Israeli currency to buy a loaf of bread or to buy milk. And this way, the Israelis are controlling us financially. Also, let's say I'm living in Jerusalem and I go and buy a refrigerator. Of course, there is a tax. Now, this tax should go to the Palestinian Authority. But now the Israelis are taking all the tax money and they are saying to the Israeli Authority, we will not give you back your money unless you do 1, 2, 3, whatever we want you to do. It is choking occupation. It's really, it has to do with every aspect of life. Take, for example, the water. They can come to the West Bank and take the artesian water from under the ground, and they can use it for the settlements, but not for the Palestinians, who are the owners of the land. This is outrageous, and this is happening all the time. Then when they want to build walls of separation between Palestinians and Israelis, they come to the middle of the Palestinian town and they build a wall of separation, not only separating Israelis from Palestinians, but also separating Palestinians from Palestinians. It's really a reign of terror that is going on in the West Bank. And it's in the eyes of the whole humanity. And now, like I said before, even the New York Times, the Washington Post, and the BBC now are not afraid to report about it because it's the reality that is there and they cannot continue to deny it.
Yes. And like I was mentioning earlier, and thank you for that insight, that the Congolese government, and that's breaking news, was able to sign. Let me see if I can find that news record. That was able to sign an agreement with M23. I'm just gonna put this on the screen. It's very important for our conversation again. Just trying to draw the parallel between Palestine and the Congo. And I'm going to share this tab. Okay, I think this will work. Oops. Okay, and it says that the state of Qatar announces the signing of the Doha framework for the peace agreement between the governments of the Democratic Republic of the Congo and the Congo River Alliance M23 movements. This development marks a new and important milestone in the ongoing peace process facilitated by Qatar, building on the momentum of the Doha Declaration of Principles signed on 19th of July in Doha. The framework reaffirms that parties' shared commitment to address the root causes of the conflicts through structured dialogue, conference building measures, and a phased approach to de-escalate and stabilization. It further underscores the priority placed on the protection of civilians, respect for human rights, the safe and dignified return of displaced person, and the advancement of national reconciliation and unity. The Doha Framework serves as a foundational reference document for the broader peace process. To ensure effective and practical implementation, the parties have agreed that a series of subsequent protocols, annexes, and technical agreements will be developed in the coming period. This will address specific operational aspects, including the consolidation and verification of the ceasefire modalities to troop disengagement, humanitarian access, reintegration pathways, and the support for national dialogue. So this is breaking news that was signed and by the Qatar government. In between, that was an agreement signed between the DRC, the Congo, and M23, which is round back militia. And then it's very interesting that we have the visit of the Israeli presidents. And by the way, the Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, he has met multiple times. Maybe I can show this. The president of the Congo, Felix Tshisekedi, and even talking about. Yeah, maybe I'll start here. Hold on. Yeah, even talking about, and that was a statement that was made as the DRC's government, and that was on the Tshisekedi pledged to have an embassy, a Congolese embassy in Jerusalem, and that has been really controversial because for years the DRC has been trying to be neutral, even though I can say that there was no such thing as neutrality in the face of oppression, but the policy of the Congo for years has been trying to stay out of the conflicts, not trying to do things that will make things worse when it comes to the Israel and Palestine conflicts. And but something very interesting though, and for the audience is that when President Tshisekedi became president in 2020, in 2019, I guess, illegitimate president, I have to say. One of his very first official visit in the U.S., very first one, he went and spoke at APAC. So he was up there, one of the only states of official president, I would say, to speak at APAC, and he did that in 2020. And then also, I've talked about the meeting with Benjamin Netanyahu later on, and he even said in that, which is really strange, right? Like it's time. It looks like Congo and Rwanda are opposed on almost everything, But when it comes to the agreements that Israel shall continue to oppress Palestinian, that Israel shall be given the green lights or the carte blanche to commit genocide, then suddenly there are in common agreements. And Benjamin Netanyahu, he said, when also an embassy of Israel was supposed to be open in Kigali, which was the first time in years, and he said, and I quote, that it was the government. And then they said that the Israel is that Rwanda, the government of Rwanda or the state of Rwanda, is an extension of the government of Israel.
Mm-hmm.
And they have been mimicking, I would say, the policy that whatever is happening or has been happening in Gaza, the West Bank, in terms of their ethnic cleansing, it is happening in the Congo as well. And that was also documented by Human Rights Watch, and that talked about how the UNHCR, so the UNCR, which is the United Nations organization in charge of like refugees, and they accused that United Nations entity of aiding the Rwandan government of ethnic cleansing, essentially, because the Rwandan government has been getting buses and sending not just Rwandan refugees in the Congo to Rwanda, but also Congolese citizen. And when Congolese citizen will show the card, the ID, the M23, which is now the occupier, or the Rwandan government, who's now the occupier, will has been confiscating those ID or those papers that show that you own the land that you are standing on, that you are a Congolese citizen. They would confiscate their idea, their proof of the documents, the official documents, sometimes burn them, and still load them in buses and send them to the Rwandan governments, where human rights has absolutely no access to that. So there is that ethnic cleansing that has been happening on top of the killing of the Congolese people who have been resisting, whether it's peacefully or even armed resistance called Wazalendo. That, some of them, obviously, I have to say, that are also committing some crimes there. But there is that similarity, and also in using the genocide as a weapon. The Rwandan government has weaponized the genocide that they went through, that when in 1994, after the plan of former President Habyarimana was shut down, and inside it was also another president with him, I think 3 presidents of Uganda and Burundi, I believe. And right after that, that was a genocide that kills Tutsis, Hutus, and Rwandan nationals in general. And they have been using that narrative to kind of justify the occupation, to kind of justify the war. And they talk about, and even they talk about disengagement, they talk about their presence in the Congolese, on Congolese soil, as a defensive measure, right? So it's like, because we were victim of genocide, we don't want genocide to happen again. Therefore, we are in the Congo, essentially committing war crimes and genocide. So it's very important for us to kind of like know kind of the history of how Israel operates, that Israel can go and shake hands with the president of the DRC and at the same time sell weapons to Rwanda and kind of like give its blessing as Rwanda is invading and continue to encroach into Rwandan Congolese territories. And we've seen that too with Palestinians, with Gaza, how the U.S. can sell weapons on one hand, but at the same time said, "Hey, we want to work for peace, and we have a Gaza peace plan." When you selling weapons to the country that is bombing, and one more thing that I also want to mention, it was the fact that partnership between the Congolese governments and the Israeli governments was really described with this training that the Tshisekedi's Republican Guard have been receiving by Israelis, by the IDF, right? So there is really a very important needs to have that I would say connection that the Congolese government, the Congolese president, want Israel to essentially arm and train his militia groups or his Republican guards for its safety. In exchange, I guess he gets to close his eyes as the US, as the United Nations is about to welcome, the United Nations Security Council is about to welcome the DRC as a non-permanent member at the Security Council. So when it will come to having resolution, when we come to having votes, Israel just want to make sure that he has the DRC in his pockets when it comes to that, which really also speak volume of another involvement of someone that is really kind of like not strange or not unknown to the Israeli apparatus system. It's Zach Fisher, and I was talking to some of my uh, comrades at the Congolese Action Youth platform. Shout out to the Congolese Action Youth platform, and also the spokesperson Sly Sylvester Mido. And I, in my research, right, and I'm gonna pause there. I found that this man, Isaac Fisher, who was appointed as a new chairman, was a chairman of the board of director of the Rwandan Mining Board, which is essentially in charge of essentially like many things, licensing, mineral exploitation, mineral investment opportunities, a lot of that, and you can see all 9 missions that they have. But something very strange and very, very critical for the conversation when it comes to the Congo is the mineral traceability. So he is leading an organization, a government organization in Rwanda that is supposed to know where the minerals that the Rwandan government is selling to the world is actually coming from. And that is being bored. So that entity is being chaired by an Israeli who was a campaign manager of Benjamin Netanyahu, who also served as a treasurer of the Likud party. And you probably know more than me about the Likud party. But that's not it. He's also part of the Rwandan Development Board, RDB, right, which really drives the nation's economic development when it comes to using the brand Visit Rwanda, when it comes to trying to that we at Friends of the Congo we talk about like sport washing. He's also chairing that board, right? So why is there a need to have a foreigner and not just a regular foreigner, somebody super close to the Israeli government, to share not one but 2 organizations in Rwanda that are somehow involved into the into covering the war crimes, into covering the crimes against humanity that Rwanda is committed. So I'm really gonna pause there, and I have really one final question, but because I get your question, probably maybe if you have like a comment about what I just shared about the connection really between the Congo, Palestine, and how it is very important to follow the activities of Israeli officials, whether it is in Congo or Rwanda.
Yeah, I mean, my only comment is that, today we really cannot trust our governments, and we need a massive move of people. Look what happened in New York. In New York, they were able to elect, Mamdani, who is a Muslim. He is a foreigner born not in the United States. That is because the people, they were empowered. And I think the people in Congo, they need to be empowered so that they can control their minerals, they can control their finances, they can control their commerce, they can control their politics, they can control their position at the United Nations and internationally. So we the people need to put pressure on the government to do the right thing. And the people need to also, be aware of the evil that is happening, whether it is in Rwanda or in Palestine, and say no to, genocide, whether Rwandan genocide against people in Congo, or whether Israeli genocide against Israel, and the Israel against the Palestinians, I wanted to say. And also, this is the time when Congo needs to step up and join the nations that are calling for a free Palestine, an independent and free Palestine. This is really a golden opportunity for the Congo to join the United Nations in doing what is right and what is good for all Israelis and all Palestinians, because once you have peace, peace does not mean peace only for Palestinians. It will be peace for both Israelis and Palestinians. And in Congo, if you have really peace on your borders, it will be peace for you people in Congo and for the Rwandan people. So peace should be desired, but the masses of people need to influence the dictators and the governors and the presidents and whoever to try to do what is right and what is just.
Okay. Thank you so much. So we're almost at the end. So I guess as the DRC takes its seats at the UN Security Council, which is supposed to be in effect in January 2026, what would you say to Congolese citizens? Because we know that, and I've shared that, and we've been saying that for years, that one of the problems with there are four dimensions that at Friends of the Congo we're trying to tackle when it comes to the issue of the Congo. The ongoing crisis. There is the external forces, multinationals that are really responsible to also the crisis. There are regional forces with Rwanda, Uganda, and other countries that are somehow invading and encroaching on Congolese territories. You also have the West that is allowing all of that to happen, giving carte blanche, blessing Rwanda to invade the Congo and allowing them to support militia groups to kill Congolese civilians, or Ugandan to also do the same, Ugandan government. And then the fourth and last one is the Congolese elite. That is a problem, as I've been trying to demonstrate. So I'm not going to address, or I do not want you to address the Congolese leadership, which we know is corrupt. But what would you say to the citizen? How can we advocate for justice while trying to navigate these geopolitical alliances? Because you said that we cannot trust our government.
Yeah. I would say to the Congolese citizen, take a hard look at the situation in the West Bank and in Gaza and in other places in the world where there is injustice. Take a hard look, analyze what's going on. Try to find out who is doing harm and who is trying to work for peace, and stand with those who are working for peace and justice. And I learned this really from the story of the Good Samaritan. Yeah, I learned this from the story of the Good Samaritan. In the story of the Good Samaritan in the Bible, Jesus said that this guy going from Jerusalem to Jericho, he took a good look. He saw a victim, and he went to help that victim. So we as humans, whether we are in Congo or any place in the world, we need to take a look at areas where there is conflict in the world, where there are genocides, where there is apartheid, and we need to stand with the victim like Jesus taught us. And we need to identify with the victim, and we need to ask ourselves, what can we do? In the story of the Good Samaritan, he put him on his um, beast, and he took him to a hospital. He took care of him. He paid money for him. And I would say, with God's help, what can we do to help people who are oppressed? And as the Congolese people, I believe, take a look and see the situation, they will immediately side with the Palestinians, because that's where justice is.
Yes, thank you so much, Reverend Awad,
Welcome.
for your words, for your wisdom, for your clarity, because you brought clarity into our struggle, into why we really need to pay attention about the geopolitics happening. And somebody on Instagram was saying Israeli weapons in the DRC. Yes, Israeli weapon in the DRC. And I think the conversation that we are having as someone coming from a country that is Christian, and we were taught our whole life just same spirits of supporting Israel, blessing Israel, right? And now that story is really in contradiction with what we see every single day as Christian, as people who believe in God, as people who believe in humanity. How can you now be silenced when you see kids getting slaughtered? That's whether they're trying to bring Islamophobia to kind of like give a blessing. But as you explain in our conversation, our really difficult conversation and deep conversation, that the victims are not just Muslims, right? That we should not demonize people because they have or they hold a different religion than us. And even if that's their standpoint, that's their prejudice, then what is your excuses when you see other Christians being killed? And thank you, Willie, for deconstructing, breaking down for us the history of the conflict with Christian Zionism. And I think that conversation was necessary. It wasn't easy. It's not easy to hear those type of things, but it is really necessary, because I think that we need the truth. We need history that you provided, and we need each other above all. So to our listeners, really, if these episodes moved you, challenged you, or taught you something new, please make sure that you share this. And I'm gonna put also something for y'all to just go ahead and just scan. If I can find it, I cannot. But please visit freecongo.org, and you will be able to see the steps that you need to take for, there you go. Bottom left, you can scan this, freecongo.org, and you will be able to see the steps that you need to take to be involved. And in our next episodes, I'm hoping to bring other guests from Palestine, and why not for also Congo, to really dive into the geopolitical perspective, or the geopolitical aspect, and the legal perspective on what accountability looks like, not only in Palestine but also in the Congo. So, Reverend Awad, thank you so much for sitting with me. So I will definitely talk to you next time.
Thank you for inviting me.
Yes,
God
thank
bless
you.
you. Sure.
Yes, yes. And for the folks watching us, I also really appreciate just y'all just being tuned in, and there's comments. I'm taking the comments that we're getting. 2.0 Salom on Instagram say when enough is enough. Yes. Blue Dot and Red 47, Israeli weapon in DRC. Yes. Your Israeli weapons allegedly, as documented by the United Nations in the DRC. Andrew Sukar say exactly solidarity from Venezuela and diaspora with you both. I appreciate you, appreciate you, appreciate you. And then Bree Nana said, no one in humanity is free until we are all free. Imperialism never ended, but switched to funding and creating destabilizations in order to maintain control of resources. Disgraceful and inhumane. I second that. Imani said, amen to that. Tirahi said, thank you, Brother Gaito and Alex, for informative session. I appreciate you. Thanks for being tuned in and watching us, because really the reason why we decided to create this a year ago, it was so that we will not only being able to provide information, but also trying to bridge knowledge, bridge the gap of knowledge. Because what's happening in the Congo cannot be understood solely through the lens of Congolese people, through the lens of Congolese issues or Congolese politics. And I've got to realize that. Friends of the Congo realize it. That's why we created really this huge network of advocacy when we are really challenging Congress men and women in the US, because we understand that the situation in the Congo is a direct consequence of the United States foreign policy. And I'm not saying that because I'm just saying that. I'm saying that because it has been documented. And I mentioned that the very first person, the very first president of a Western country to essentially recognize Congo Free State, which was the personal property of King Leopold II. It was the US president, the 22nd president and 24th president of the United States, Grover Cleveland. And that is history. We cannot erase it. We cannot change it, right? So it is the US foreign policy, the same that is conducting what's going on in the Middle East. It is it is the same US foreign policy that conducted the creation of a nation that will be used solely for extractions, for plundering. So the Congo was designed to be plundered. King Leopold II was, I would say, the middleman, the person who facilitated that, right? That was made possible because the United States at the time, September 11, 1885, decided that they were going to recognize him as such. That they were going to, at the same time, deny the humanity of the millions of Congolese people living there, forced to essentially collect rubber, which is in a liquid form, right? Because you get that from plants for trees. And they had to meet about the equivalence of 20 pounds. Can you imagine? You have to harvest 20 pounds of a liquid so that they can be shipped. And if you fail to do that, your hands will simply get cut off. So there's a question here, a comment. Is it as simple as the God will bless curse? Both sides seems to use the morality embedded in religion to justify atrocities. I'm not sure what you mean by both sides. Maybe you can clarify in the next comment. But that's the narrative that we see, right? And that's what I was trying to say, that growing up, personally, like when you hear what's going on in the Middle East, because we had a guest from there, Reverend Alex Awad, who is Christian. But the narrative has been about terrorism. The narrative has been, and that's the Western media, that's the mainstream media. And the narrative has been about Islam, right? But I'm trying to kind of force people to confront their own beliefs, that if Islam is the issue, as they think, wrongfully so, because that's their prejudice, then how do you explain churches being bombed, Christian churches being bombed? How do you explain Christians being killed in the same country, right? Because the same morality also is being used when it comes to the Congolese conflict. That the reason why the Rwandan government is in the DRC illegally violating international law is because they want to defeat the FDLR, who has been accused, or whose former members have been accused, allegedly, of committing genocide. Yet not a single member of the FDLR have been convicted. And there was a whole tribunal created to trial genocide cases that happened in Rwanda. Not a single member of the FDLR has been convicted of genocide. Look it up. And not just that, the FDLR was created in the early 2002. But when you look at the framework of the different peace accord, even the one that opposed, because really the people that were committing the genocide, and that is also documented, this group called Interahamwe, that were literally involved, that was proven of killing. But when there was a peace accord, because the Interahamwe came to the Congo, they committed genocide, they crossed the border, came into Congo, there was a peace agreement signed in 2002. The same year that the FDLR was created, and I will even say that that was signed after the creation of the FDLR. So if the objective today is to dismantle, to destroy the FDLR, how come in 2002 they were not even included in that peace accord? Not even mentioned, not a single time. Because when you want to use a morality as that they are the bad people, they are evil, and use that morality to put yourself above even the concept of justice, who are you, even as a nation, to decide that somebody's life should be ended without any trial? That's even the point of justice, right? Like, people need fair trial. Like, if they have committed genocide, if they have committed a crime, arrest them. And they should follow the process. I believe in that. Somebody committed a crime does not give you license not only to kill them, but also kill everybody else, because that's exactly what's going on. Because the victims, the 5.4 millions of people who have been killed, as reported by the International Rescue Committee in 2007, and that was the last time that they were counting deaths in the Congo. They were not just FDLR members. There were women. There were children. There were people who did not even belong to any organization, who never even knew how to use a gun. Women and children are, just like in any other war, are the most targeted. So it's very important for us to, at least when trying to confront people within the prejudice, because you cannot change them. I cannot change somebody who think that I'm lesser than him because I'm Black, but I can challenge their beliefs. You can change the belief of a racist person by asking, but if you think that this person is superior than you or inferior than you, then how come do you explain all the things that they've been able to achieve? How come do you explain their academic achievement? Right? Because I remember that was really problematic. I went to Oregon State in that time. One of the TAs had super racist conservative views and wrote an op-ed at that time that he thought that black people, people of color in his class, were not smart. Then if somebody believes that, then you need to be able to confront them with the idea, okay, if you think that black people are not smart or being intelligent depends on somebody's skin color, how do you explain the achievement of this person, of this person, or that person? How do you explain this? So it is the same idea. If you think that what's going on, we discuss about Gaza, it's about religion, it's about protecting Western ideology or Christian religion, then how come you explain Christians being killed in Gaza, in the West Bank? How come you explain Christians in Israel being also mistreated? And these are the things that we should be able to confront them with. That if you, as the Rwandan government, you're talking about defensive measures because you're trying to protect your country from the FDLR, how come do you explain that your country is accused of plundering resources? What does coltan has to do with you fighting FDLR? What does diamond, cobalt have to do with, or gold have to do with you trying to neutralize the FDLR, right? What does children have to do with that? And also another comment, 600 point on Tshisekedi's latest stupidity, not to mention his arrogance on the support Israel provides to Rwanda. Such a colonized mind, the Congolese people deserve better. Absolutely, 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 absolutely. But while the Congolese leadership, right, stands with when the Congolese leadership stands with Israel, the occupier, it's very important to remind or let people know that the Congolese people, the Congolese youth, stand with Palestine. That is a fact. Don't be blinded by what you see on mainstream media controlled by people. Don't be fooled by the speech given by the president, who was never elected, so does not speak for the Congolese people. Do not fool by that. Do not fool by these influencers that will make statements, content to divide us in our quest for solidarity as we are seeking justice. Because I remember my mom say something very interesting years ago when I was consistently complaining that something nice and good was being given to my siblings and not me. 'Cause I was, you know, firstborn son, so I thought that things should belong to me first. And she said that when your neighbor is being blessed, it means that God is in the neighborhood. And because God is in the neighborhood, you are going to be next. So, in that wise quote from my mom, that when we are fighting to get justice, the recognition of genocide for economic gain, the recognition of the 10 million people killed under King Leopold II, the recognition of the 5.4 million people killed between 1993 and 2003, or during the first, I would say, I'm going to push back on that. During the first Rwandan invasion of the Congo, the second Congo invasion as well, the invasion of the Congo by Rwanda. So in that quest for justice to work for us, as we are organizing, as we are educating, that quest for justice will be efficient if it's working elsewhere. Apartheid was able to be deemed bad because in South Africa, the youth stood up and they said, we do not want apartheid. The United Nations General Assembly was able to provide this resolution that was repeated multiple times by Malcolm X, by all means necessary. Meaning, if you look at the history of the UN General Assembly trying to support the struggle of South Africa, and was able to put together a resolution, and I'm going to share that with you all. Was able to put together a resolution to support that, to support the right of people to self-determination, struggle by all available means. That's where Malcolm X got his famous quote, by all means necessary. And if a nation that is being oppressed almost the same way that the Congolese people are oppressed are able to get justice, that set precedence. A superpower arming a country that is killing you, that is displacing your people, that is playing a facilitated role for peace. It is something, it's the same song in the Congo when it comes to Rwanda. Because that was the news, and I said earlier, that was the news today. And then we're going to take a listen to the news that came out.
The Democratic Republic of Congo and the M23 rebel group signed a framework agreement for a peace deal aimed at ending fighting in eastern Congo. The agreement was signed on Saturday by representatives from both sides in a ceremony in Qatar. Donald Trump's senior advisor for Africa and the Middle East, Massad Boulos, warned patience would be required.
So this will take time, hopefully not too long, but we have to allow time, we have to give the chance for the parties to work through these mechanisms.
M23 seized Goma, eastern Congo's largest city, in January in a string of actions supported by neighbouring Rwanda. It went on to make gains across North Kivu and South Kivu provinces. Rwanda has long denied allegations that it's helped M23. The fighting has killed thousands of people and displaced hundreds of thousands more this year, while also escalating the risk of a full-scale regional war. Qatar has hosted multiple rounds of direct talks between the Congo government and the rebels, but they have dealt largely with the preconditions and confidence-building measures. The two sides agreed in July to a declaration of principles that left many key issues and the root of the conflict unresolved. In October, they reached a deal on the monitoring of an eventual ceasefire.
And if instead of having peace agreements, that will never bring peace, and if instead of that we were getting justice, just like the South African got justice, just like hopefully the Palestinian people will get justice at the International Court of Justice. And if justice can happen or can come to them, then Congolese people can only be hopeful that if a leader currently serving could be tried at the International Criminal Court for war crimes, for starvation of civilians, for genocide, for crimes against humanity, then there is hope that the same thing could happen in the Congo against the president of Rwanda, Paul Kagame. So that's why it's very important for us to bridge the gap of knowledge of what's going on in other countries, in Sudan. That what's going on in Sudan, what's going on in Palestine, even what happened in Haiti, right? Because when we are able to understand the geopolitics of these issues, then we can look at the Congo's crisis not as an isolated issue, that it is a tribal issue. We will see that as an interconnected oppression, part of the global system that is taking away from the Congolese people, taking away their resources, taking away their rights, taking away their dignity. And we will see that it is the same global system that is oppressing the Palestinian people, taking away their dignity, taking away their rights to even exist. So it is my hope that justice will come for those nations, for those people, for those civilians, people who have done nothing wrong but exist. Because our own existence has been part of our resistance. We resist first and foremost because we exist. So to you, I'm going to challenge y'all for this week until our next episode, where I will do my best to break down or decompose the geopolitical perspective or the legal perspective of the Israel president visit in the Congo, hoping to have guests, hoping to have two guests. Not gonna name them. If we can have one, that would be awesome. I'm gonna challenge you to keep your eyes open. I'm gonna challenge you into those hot headlines that you see, how you can draw the connection with other oppressions happening. That in the midst of inflation and tariffs and things happening, why would the president of Israel visit the DRC? Why the DRC? What does it mean for the DRC to be in January 2026, in a couple months? A UN Security Council non-permanent member, and what that means on the international level. what that means for justice, not just for the Congolese people, but for any oppressed nations in the world. I'm going to challenge you to see oppression as a global system. And I'm going to challenge you to see the resistance as you existing and educating yourself, you existing in sharing our contents, you existing in joining the Free Congo movement, writing letters to your member of Congress, donating to us. So it was really my pleasure to be with you again, to discuss and learn with you about this episode of Gaza, the DRC, and Herzog, President Herzog visit, an honest conversation with Reverend Alex Awad. Until next time, have a happy Saturday. Make sure that you rest. Make sure that you take care of yourself, that you log out, that you spend time with family, with your loved ones. Make sure that you have health, self-care, that you take care of yourself. Organizing is good, but we need to take the time to rest between our organizing efforts. So thank you all, and I will see you next week. Peace.